In storm-swept Ashford Manor, Hercule Poirot faces a deadly game. A cunning mastermind taunts him with cryptic codes and chilling notes as guests fall, poisoned, stabbed. The dark secret of a 1905 jewel heist binds the murders to a betrayal in the Ashford family. Can Poirot crack the cipher, unlock the hidden vault, and stop the killer before they strike again? Time's running out, and the truth lurks in the shadows. Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Invitation. The rain tapped softly on the window of Hercule Poirot's tidy London apartment, a gentle beat that matched the ticking of the old clock on the mantel. Poirot sat in his favorite armchair, a steaming cup of hot chocolate in his hand, his neat mustache twitching as he studied a letter. The paper was crisp, expensive, with handwriting that curled like vines across the page. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend, sprawled on a worn sofa across from him, flipping through a newspaper but not really reading it. The room smelled of polished wood and warm cocoa, a cozy shelter from the damp autumn evening outside. Hastings. "My friend," Poirot said, his voice sharp but warm. "What do you think of this?" He held up the letter, his small, precise hands steady. His green eyes sparkled with curiosity, like a cat spotting a mouse. Hastings lowered his paper, his broad face lighting up. He loved when Poirot got that look. It meant adventure was near. "What's that, old chap, another case?" He leaned forward, his sandy hair flopping over his forehead. Poirot's lips curved into a small smile. "Perhaps. It is an invitation, but not an ordinary one. Listen." He cleared his throat and read aloud, his French accent rolling over the words like a song. "Dear Monsieur Poirot, your fame as the greatest detective precedes you. I invite you to Ashford Manor, my estate in the English countryside, for a weekend of amusement. A game of wits awaits, one I believe will challenge even your remarkable mind. Bring a friend if you wish. Arrive Friday at 6. I promise a puzzle worthy of your talents. Yours sincerely, a friend." Hastings frowned, scratching his chin. A friend? Who signs a letter like that? Sounds fishy to me. Poirot nodded, tapping the letter against his knee. "Oui. It is most curious. No name, no address, yet they know where to send this to me. And this game of wits, it intrigues me, Hastings. The little gray cells, they are already stirring." Hastings chuckled. "Your gray cells are never still, Poirot. But a country weekend. Sounds like fun. Shall we go?" Poirot tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "Fun, perhaps, but I sense something more. This letter, it is too clever, too vague. It is a challenge, yes, but also a trap, maybe. We must be careful, mon ami." Hastings grinned, undaunted. "Trap or not, I'm in. A bit of mystery never hurt anyone. When do we leave?" "Tomorrow," Poirot said, folding the letter neatly. "The train leaves at noon. We will arrive at Ashford Manor by evening. Pack lightly, Hastings. But bring your courage. I suspect we will need it." The next day, the train rattled through the misty English countryside, green hills blurring past the window. Poirot sat upright, his black suit immaculate, his hat perched perfectly on his head. Hastings, slouched beside him, munched on a sandwich, his eyes fixed on the scenery. "Lovely country, isn't it?" he said between bites. "Makes you forget all the city noise." Poirot sniffed, adjusting his gloves. "The country is charming, yes, but it hides secrets, Hastings. Do not be fooled by its beauty." Hastings rolled his eyes. "Always so dramatic, Poirot. It's just a weekend party, not a crime scene." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "We shall see." The train stopped at a small station where a sleek black car waited. The driver, a tall man with a stern face and a scar above his brow, said little, only nodding when Poirot gave his name. "Ashford Manor," he grunted, opening the car door. The drive wound through narrow roads past ancient oaks and stone walls until a grand estate loomed into view. Ashford Manor was a sprawling stone mansion, its towers piercing the foggy sky, its windows glowing like eyes in the dusk. "Impressive," Hastings whistled, stepping out of the car. "This place must be centuries old." Poirot's gaze swept over the manor, noting the ivy clinging to the walls, the heavy oak door, and the faint flicker of candlelight inside. Old, yes, he murmured, and full of stories, I think. The door swung open and a butler greeted them, his face pale and stiff like a wax figure. "Welcome, Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," he said, his voice smooth but cold. "I am Grayson, the butler. Lord Ashford awaits you in the drawing room." They followed Grayson through a grand hall, its walls lined with portraits of stern-faced men and women, their eyes seeming to follow the guests. The air smelled of wax and old books with a hint of something sharp like polish or medicine. Hastings shivered, pulling his coat tighter. "Bit creepy, eh?" he whispered. Poirot only smiled, his eyes darting to every detail. The polished floor, the creak of a distant door, the faint scuff on Grayson's otherwise spotless shoes. "Creepy, perhaps, but interesting," he replied softly. The drawing room was warm and bright, a stark contrast to the chilly hall. A fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace, casting shadows on the velvet curtains and ornate furniture. 5 people stood or sat around the room, their chatter stopping as Poirot and Hastings entered. Lord Reginald Ashford, the host, stepped forward, a tall man with silver hair and a sly smile. His blue eyes twinkled, but there was a sharpness, to them like a fox sizing up its prey. "Monsieur Poirot," Ashford boomed, shaking his hand. "What an honor to have the world's greatest detective in my humble home. And Captain Hastings, welcome." He clapped Hastings on the shoulder, nearly knocking him off balance. "Humble?" Hastings muttered, glancing at the crystal chandelier overhead. "This place is a palace." Ashford laughed, a loud, hearty sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Come meet my guests. We're a small but lively bunch, perfect for our little game." He introduced the others, each one a puzzle piece in Poirot's sharp mind. First was Sir Harold Baxter, a wealthy industrialist with a red face and a booming voice, his gold watch glinting as he waved his hands. "Heard of you, Poirot," he said gruffly. "Hope you're as clever as they say." Next was Miss Clara Duval, a retired actress with dramatic curls and a silk dress that shimmered in the firelight. She batted her lashes at Poirot, her smile too wide. "Oh, monsieur, I've read all about your cases. You're simply divine." Her voice was like honey, but Poirot caught a flicker of nervousness in her eyes. Then came Mr. Leonard Finch, a journalist with a thin face and sharp eyes, scribbling notes in a small book. He barely looked up, muttering, "Poirot, huh? Interesting." His fingers twitched, as if hiding something. The final guest was Miss Emily Ashford, a young heiress and Lord Ashford's niece. She was pale and quiet, her dark eyes darting around the room like a frightened deer. Pleased to meet you," she stammered, clutching a lace handkerchief. Grayson, the butler, hovered near the door, his gaze fixed on the floor. Poirot noted his stillness like a statue waiting to move. "Dinner will be served soon," Ashford said, clapping his hands. "But first, let me explain our weekend. I've planned a game, a murder mystery, if you will. Each of you will play a part and one of you will be the victim. The goal is to solve the crime before Sunday." "Fun, isn't it?" the guests murmured, some excited, some uneasy. Clara clapped, her rings flashing. "Marvelous, I love a good drama." Baxter snorted. "Sounds like a waste of time, but I'll play along." Finch's pen scratched faster, his eyes narrowing. Emily said nothing, twisting her handkerchief tighter. Poirot's mustache twitched. "A game, you say? And what is the prize, Lord Ashford?" Ashford's smile widened, but his eyes grew colder. "Satisfaction, Monsieur Poirot. The thrill of outsmarting the others. And for you, perhaps, the chance to prove your reputation." Hastings laughed. "Poirot doesn't need to prove anything. He'll have your game solved by breakfast. We shall see," Ashford said, his voice soft but sharp like a hidden blade. Dinner was a grand affair, served in a dining room with a long oak table and candles flickering in silver holders. The food was rich, roast lamb, creamy potatoes, and wine that sparkled in crystal glasses. Poirot ate sparingly, his eyes moving from face to face, catching every glance, every nervous gesture. Baxter talked loudly about his factories, Clara, told stories of her theater days, and Finch asked pointed questions about Ashford's family history. Emily barely spoke, her fork trembling as she pushed food around her plate. Ashford, at the head of the table, watched Poirot closely, his smile never fading. "Tell me, monsieur," he said, swirling his wine. "How do you solve a crime? What's your secret?" Poirot sipped his water, his gaze steady. "There is no secret, only method. I observe, I think. I listen to the little gray cells. They tell me what others try to hide." Clara laughed, clapping her hands. "Oh, how poetic. You must be a terror to criminals." Finch's pen paused, his eyes flicking to Poirot. "Ever met a criminal you couldn't catch?" Poirot's smile was small but confident. "Not yet, Monsieur Finch." After dinner, the guests moved to the library, a vast room lined with bookshelves that stretched to the ceiling. A fire burned low, casting long shadows. Ashford handed out envelopes, each containing a role for the murder mystery game. "Read these privately," he said. "Your role might be victim, detective, or even the killer. Don't tell anyone until the game begins tomorrow." Poirot opened his envelope, his eyes scanning the card inside. It read, "Detective. Find the truth before it finds you." He folded it, slipping it into his pocket, his mind already racing. Hastings, reading his own card, whispered, "I'm a witness. What's yours?" Poirot only smiled. "A role I am most suited for, mon ami." As the guests chatted, Poirot wandered the library, his fingers brushing the spines of old books. He noticed a faint mark on the floor near a shelf, as if something heavy had been moved. Kneeling, he saw a tiny scratch, fresh and sharp. Curio. Chapter 2. The Rules of the Game. The morning sun crept through the heavy curtains of Ashford Manor, casting pale golden stripes across the polished wooden floor of Hercule Poirot's bedroom. He stood at the window, already dressed in his crisp black suit, his mustache perfectly groomed, his green eyes scanning the misty gardens below. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp grass and old stone. Somewhere in the distance, a bird chirped, but the manor itself was quiet, almost too quiet, as if holding its breath. Poirot's mind buzzed, the little gray cells turning over the events of the previous evening. The mysterious letter, the odd guests, the sly smile of Lord Reginald Ashford. Something was not right, and Poirot was determined to find out what. "Captain." Hastings knocked on the door, his cheerful voice breaking the silence. "Poirot, you up? Breakfast is ready and I'm starving." His sandy hair was tousled, his tie slightly crooked, but his grin was as bright as ever. Poirot turned, adjusting his cuffs. "Good morning, mon ami. You are always starving, I think. But come, we must join the others. There is much to observe today." They descended the grand staircase, the portraits on the walls watching them with painted eyes. The dining room was as grand as the night before, with sunlight streaming through tall windows glinting off the silverware. The table was set with plates of eggs, toast, sausages, and pots of steaming tea. The guests were already seated, their faces a mix of curiosity, boredom, and unease. Lord Ashford sat at the head, his silver hair gleaming, his smile wide but sharp, like a blade hidden in velvet. "Good morning, Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," he called, waving them to their seats. "I trust you slept well?" "Well enough," Poirot said, his voice polite but guarded. He took a seat, his eyes flicking to each guest. Sir Harold Baxter, the industrialist, was piling sausages onto his plate, his red face flushed as he grumbled about the early hour. Miss Clara Duval, the retired actress, sipped tea delicately, her silk scarf fluttering as she tossed her curls and smiled, at no one in particular. Mr. Leonard Finch, the journalist, scribbled in his notebook, his sharp eyes darting between bites of toast. Miss Emily Ashford, the young heiress, sat quietly, her pale hands folded in her lap, her dark eyes fixed on her untouched plate. Grayson, the butler, moved silently around the table, pouring tea with a precision that Poirot noted with interest. Hastings dug into his eggs, oblivious to the tension. "Fine spread, this," he said, his mouth full. You've got a good cook, Lord Ashford. Ashford chuckled, but his eyes stayed on Poirot. Only the best for my guests. Now let us talk about the game. I promised you a challenge, and today we begin. The guests leaned forward, even Baxter pausing his chewing. Clara clapped her hands, her rings flashing. Oh, how exciting. Do tell, Reggie. Ashford stood, his tall frame commanding the room. As I said last night, we are playing a murder mystery. Each of you has a role: victim, detective, witness, or perhaps the killer. He paused, his smile widening. At noon today, our crime will occur. One of you will be murdered in the library, and the rest must solve the puzzle. There will be clues, red herrings, and secrets to uncover. The first to name the killer correctly wins my admiration, and perhaps a little something extra. Baxter snorted, wiping his mouth. Sounds like a silly game to me. I'd rather be golfing. Clara laughed, her voice like a bell. Oh, Harold, don't be such a grump. It's fun. I used to play parts like this on stage. Maybe I'll be the victim. She struck a dramatic pose, one hand on her heart. Finch's pen scratched faster, his eyes narrowing. What's the catch, Ashford? Games like this always have a twist. Ashford's smile didn't waver, but Poirot caught a flicker of something, amusement, or perhaps something darker, in his eyes. No catch, Mr. Finch. Just a test of wits. And with Monsieur Poirot here, I'm sure the game will be solved. Quickly, unless of course it proves too clever even for him. Poirot sipped his tea, his face calm but his mind racing. A game is only as good as its rules, Lord Ashford. Tell me, how will this murder be staged? And how do we know what is real and what is not? Ashford leaned back, his fingers steepled. A fair question. The victim will be found in the library, marked with a red ribbon to show it's part of the game. Clues will be scattered, notes, objects, perhaps a footprint or two. You'll have until Sunday morning to investigate. Ask questions, search the manor, use your famous gray cells, Monsieur Poirot. Hastings grinned. Sounds like a lark. I bet I'll solve it before you, Poirot. Poirot's mustache twitched. We shall see, mon ami. But I warn you all, Hercule Poirot does not play games lightly. I will find the truth, game or no game. Emily, who had been silent, spoke up, her voice soft but clear. What if something goes wrong? What if it's not just a game? The room fell quiet. Clara's smile faded, and Baxter's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Finch's pen stopped, his eyes locked on Emily. Ashford's laugh broke the silence, but it sounded forced. My dear niece, always so serious. It's just a bit of fun, nothing will go wrong. Poirot watched Emily closely, noting the way her hands trembled, the way her eyes darted to her uncle. Mademoiselle, he said gently, you seem troubled. Is there something you wish to share? She shook her head quickly, her cheeks paling. No, it's nothing. I don't like games like this. They feel too real. Grayson stepped forward, offering more tea, but Poirot noticed his hand lingered near Emily's shoulder, as if reassuring her. The butler's face remained blank, but his eyes flicked to Ashford for a moment, a glance so quick it might have been missed. But Poirot never missed such things. After breakfast, the guests scattered. Clara announced she was going to rehearse her victim pose in the garden, her laughter echoing as she flounced out. Baxter grumbled about needing a cigar and headed for the terrace. Finch slipped away, his notebook tucked under his arm, muttering about background research. Emily excused herself, saying she felt unwell, and disappeared upstairs. Ashford invited Poirot and Hastings to join him in the library to see where the game would begin. The library was even grander in daylight, its tall windows letting in soft, filtered light. The shelves were packed with leather-bound books, their spines gleaming with gold lettering. A long oak table stood in the center, surrounded by plush chairs. A chandelier hung overhead, its crystals catching the light like tiny stars. Poirot's eyes roamed the room, noting the heavy curtains, the locked glass cabinet filled with rare books, the faint smell of ink and dust. Ashford gestured to the table. This is where the murder will happen at noon. The victim will be found here, with clues nearby. You'll have free rein to search the manor. Question the guests, even check my staff if you like. No secrets here, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot smiled thinly. No secrets, you say? Yet every house has its shadows, Lord Ashford. Hastings wandered to a shelf, pulling out a book at random. Heavy stuff, he said, flipping through pages of dense text. You read all these, Ashford? Ashford shrugged. Some. My father was the collector. This manor's been in the family for generations, full of history, and, I suppose, a few ghosts. He winked, but Poirot's eyes narrowed. Ghosts, perhaps, Poirot said, or secrets dressed as ghosts. Tell me, Lord Ashford, why this game? Why invite me, a stranger, to your home? Ashford's smile faltered just for a moment. Because, monsieur, I admire you. Your cases are legendary. I thought it would be entertaining to see you in action. Poirot nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He knelt by the table, his fingers brushing the floor where he'd seen the scratch the night before. It was still there, a faint mark, as if something had been dragged. This mark, he said, pointing. It is new, yes? Ashford glanced at it, his expression unreadable. Oh, probably the staff moving furniture. Grayson's always rearranging things. Poirot stood, brushing his hands. Perhaps, but the little gray cells, they wonder. Hastings chuckled. You and your gray cells. You'll be suspecting the wallpaper next. As they left the library, Poirot paused at the door, his eyes catching a glint of something under a chair. He bent down, retrieving a small silver key no bigger than his thumb. It was ornate with a tiny engraving of a rose. He slipped it into his pocket, saying nothing. The morning passed slowly, the manor buzzing with a strange energy. Poirot and Hastings explored the grounds, walking through rose gardens and past a crumbling fountain. The air was crisp, the sky heavy with clouds. Hastings chatted about cricket, but Poirot's mind was on the guests. Clara's theatrics, Baxter's bluster, Finch's secrecy, Emily's fear, Grayson's silence, Ashford's slyness. They were all pieces of a puzzle, but the shape was still hidden. At 11, the guests gathered in the drawing room for tea. Clara was in high spirits, reciting lines from an old play, her voice carrying through the room. Baxter smoked a cigar, complaining about the damp weather. Finch sat in a corner, his notebook open, his eyes flicking to Emily, who stood by the window staring out at the gray sky. Poirot sipped his tea, watching them all. Mademoiselle Duval, he said, you seem most eager for this game. Have you played such a thing before? Clara laughed, tossing her head. Oh, dozens of times, monsieur. On stage I've been murdered 100 ways. Poison, knives, even a candlestick once. I'm ready to play dead or catch a killer. Baxter snorted. Waste of time. I'm only here because Ashford promised a business deal after this nonsense. Finch looked up, his pen pausing. Chapter 3. The first clue. The library of Ashford Manor was still, the air thick with shock and the faint coppery smell of blood. The guests stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the body of Mr. Leonard Finch, the journalist, sprawled across the oak table. The red ribbon tied around his wrist, meant to mark a playful game, now looked like a cruel joke. A tiny red stain, real blood, pooled near his hand, glinting in the dim light filtering through the heavy curtains. Hercule Poirot stood beside the table, his small frame rigid, his green eyes sharp as he took in every detail. His mustache twitched, a sign his little gray cells were already at work. Captain Hastings, pale and wide-eyed, hovered behind him, his usual cheer replaced by a nervous frown. This can't be real, Lord Ashford stammered, his silver hair falling into his eyes, his sly smile gone. It's the game, monsieur. Poirot. Finch is acting, surely. Poirot's voice was calm but firm, cutting through the panic like a knife. Non, Lord Ashford. This is no act. Monsieur Finch is dead, and we are no longer playing. He pointed to the bloodstain, small, but unmistakable. This is not paint or wine, it is blood, fresh and real. Miss Clara Duval, the retired actress, let out a dramatic gasp, her hand flying to her chest. Her silk dress rustled as she swayed, as if she might faint. Dead? Oh heavens, who would do such a thing? Her voice trembled, but her eyes darted. To the other guests, quick and calculating. Sir Harold Baxter, the industrialist, dropped his cigar, his red face turning a shade paler. This is madness. I came for a weekend, not a murder. He stepped back, his gold watch glinting as he waved his hands. Miss Emily Ashford, the young heiress, stood by the door, her face white as chalk, her lace handkerchief twisted into a knot. I knew it, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I knew this game was wrong. Grayson, the butler, stood like a statue near the door, his pale face blank but his eyes flicking to Lord Ashford, waiting for orders. Poirot noted the slight tremor in his hands, a crack in his calm. Hastings leaned close to Poirot, his voice low. What now, old chap? This is no game anymore. Poirot's eyes never left the body. Now, mon ami, we investigate. We find the truth. And we begin with the scene before us. He turned to Grayson. Monsieur, close all doors to the manor. No one leaves until I say. Fetch a sheet to cover Monsieur Finch, but touch nothing else. Grayson nodded, his movements stiff, and slipped out. The guests murmured, their voices a mix of fear and anger. Ashford mopped his brow with a handkerchief. This is my home, Poirot. You can't just... I can and I will, Poirot said, his tone sharp. A man is dead, Lord Ashford. This is no time for games or pride. You will assist or you will step aside. Ashford opened his mouth, then closed it, his face tight. Very well, he muttered. Do what you must. Poirot knelt beside Finch, his gloved hands careful not to disturb the scene. Finch's thin face was slack, his sharp eyes closed, his lips slightly parted. The red ribbon was tied loosely, as if placed after death. The notebook beside him was open, the pen still in his hand, but the page was blank except for a series of numbers scrawled in hurried ink, 7-14-21-3. Below them, in smaller letters, were the words, The Mastermind watches. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Hastings, look at this. A clue, perhaps, or a message. Hastings peered over his shoulder, squinting. Numbers? What do they mean? And Mastermind? Sounds like something from a penny dreadful. Poirot's lips curved slightly. A penny dreadful, perhaps, but written by a clever hand. These numbers are not random. They are a cipher, a code. And this Mastermind, it is a challenge directed at me, I think. Clara, recovering her composure, leaned forward, her curls bouncing. A code? Oh, how thrilling, like something from a play. What does it mean, Monsieur Poirot? Poirot stood, brushing his knees. That, mademoiselle, I will discover. But first, we must secure the scene and question everyone. No one is above suspicion. Baxter snorted, his voice gruff. Suspicion? I'm no killer. I was on the terrace smoking when the bell rang. And I was in the garden, Clara said quickly, her smile tight. Practicing my lines, you know. Emily's voice was soft, trembling. I was in my room. I didn't hear anything until the bell. Ashford spread his hands. I was in my study preparing the game. Grayson can vouch for me. Poirot's gaze flicked to the door where Grayson had returned with a white sheet. And you, Monsieur Grayson? Where were you when the bell rang? Grayson draped the sheet over Finch's body, his movements precise. In the kitchen, sir, overseeing lunch preparations, the staff can confirm. Poirot nodded, but his eyes lingered on the butler's steady hands, now calm again. Very well. We will verify all alibis. But first, I must examine this room. He moved slowly around the library, his steps light, his eyes missing nothing. The oak table was polished, but the bloodstains stood out, a stark red against the dark wood. Poirot bent closer, noting its shape, a small, uneven pool, as if dripped from a wound. He touched the edge of the stain with a gloved finger. It was still wet, meaning the death was recent, likely within the hour. Hastings followed, scratching his head. Poison, you think? Or a stab wound? There's not much blood. Poirot shook his head. Too little blood for a stab. Too much for a simple cut. Perhaps poison, perhaps something else. We must wait for a doctor to confirm. But the method, it is not as important as the why. He moved to the notebook, lifting it carefully. The numbers 7-14-21-3 were written in Finch's sharp, slanted hand, the ink fresh. The phrase, "the mastermind watches," was in the same hand, but the letters were smaller, as if written in a hurry. Poirot turned the page, finding nothing else. He slipped the notebook into his pocket, ignoring Ashford's raised eyebrow. "You're taking evidence?" Ashford asked, his tone sharp. Poirot smiled thinly. "Evidence, yes, but it is safe with Hercule Poirot. I will return it when the truth is found." He continued his search, checking the shelves, the curtains, the floor. Near the glass cabinet, of rare books, he found another mark like the one from the night before, a faint scratch as if something heavy had been moved. He knelt, running his finger along it. "This mark again," he murmured. "It is not an accident." Hastings crouched beside him. "What's it mean? Someone dragging furniture?" "Or hiding something," Poirot said, standing. He tapped the cabinet, its glass locked tight. Inside were old books, their titles faded but ornate. One caught his eye, "The Art of Deception." He filed the title away, his mind turning. Clara, watching from a chair, fanned herself with a handkerchief. "This is dreadful. Poor Mr. Finch. Who would want to hurt him?" Poirot turned, his eyes piercing. "That, mademoiselle, is the question. Monsieur Finch was a journalist, yes? A man who asks questions, who uncovers secrets. Perhaps he found one too many." Baxter huffed, crossing his arms. "Journalists are always poking their noses where they don't belong. Probably got himself in trouble." Emily's voice was sharp, surprising everyone. "That's a horrible thing to say. He was a person, not just a journalist." Baxter flushed, muttering an apology. Poirot watched Emily closely, noting her sudden fire. "Mademoiselle Ashford," he said gently, "did you know Monsieur Finch well?" She shook her head, her eyes dropping. "No, I only met him yesterday. But he seemed kind. He asked me about my family, about the manor." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Did he now? And what did you tell him?" "Nothing," she said quickly, too quickly. "Just old stories about my grandfather." Poirot nodded, but his mind was racing. Finch's questions, Emily's fear, the cipher, it was all connected. But how? Ashford clapped his hands, his voice strained. "Enough of this. We need a doctor, the police. I'll telephone the village." Poirot raised a hand. "Not yet, Lord Ashford. The storm last night has likely cut the lines and the roads are muddy. We are, for now, alone. I will investigate until help arrives." Ashford's face tightened, but he nodded. "Fine. But I want this solved quickly." Grayson stepped forward. "Shall I inform the staff, sir?" "Yes," Ashford said. "And keep them out of the library. No one touches anything." Poirot turned to the guests. "You will all remain in the drawing room until I call for you. Hastings, stay with me." The guests filed out, Clara's heels clicking, Baxter's grumbles fading, Emily's steps slow and hesitant. Ashford lingered, his eyes on Poirot. "You're sure you can handle this, monsieur?" Poirot's smile was cold. "I am Hercule Poirot. I handle everything." Alone with Hastings, Poirot returned to the body, lifting the sheet. Finch's face was pale, his lips tinged blue. "Poison, I think," Poirot said. "But how? No food, no drink nearby." Hastings frowned. "The wine last night? He drank a lot at dinner." "Perhaps," Poirot said. "But the blue lips, they suggest something faster. A needle maybe, or a gas. We must search his room." They left the library, locking the door behind them. The manor was quiet, the air heavy with tension. Finch's room was on the second floor, small but tidy, with a narrow bed, a desk, and a suitcase. Poirot searched methodically, checking drawers, pockets, the mattress. In the suitcase he found a folder of papers, clippings about Ashford Manor, old articles about a jewel heist 20 years ago, and a photograph of a young woman who looked strikingly like Emily. Curious, Poirot said, holding up the photo. This is Mademoiselle Ashford or someone very like her. Hastings squinted. Why would Finch have this? Was he investigating her? Or her family, Poirot said, slipping the photo into his pocket with the notebook. The heist, the manner, the numbers, they are pieces of the... Chapter 4. A Real Murder. The morning after Mr. Finch's murder, Ashford Manor felt like a cage. The heavy curtains blocked the weak sunlight, casting long shadows across the grand halls. The air was thick with the smell of old wood and fear, and the guests moved like ghosts, their voices hushed, their eyes darting. Hercule Poirot stood in the dining room, his black suit immaculate, his mustache perfectly groomed, but his green eyes burned with focus. The little gray cells were awake, piecing together the puzzle of Finch's death. Captain Hastings sat at the breakfast table, picking at his toast, his usual cheer replaced by a nervous frown. The other guests, Lord Ashford, Miss Clara Duval, Sir Harold Baxter, Miss Emily Ashford, and the butler Grayson, were there too, their faces a mix of shock, suspicion, and unease. Poirot held Finch's notebook, its cryptic numbers, 7, 14, 21, 3, and the phrase "the Mastermind watches," staring up at him like a taunt. The bloodstain in the library, the blue tinge on Finch's lips, and the photograph of a young woman resembling Emily all swirled in his mind. This was no game anymore. A real killer was among them, and Poirot was determined to find them. Lord Ashford, at the head of the table, broke the silence, his voice strained. "Monsieur Poirot, have you found anything? We can't just sit here locked in like prisoners." Poirot's gaze was steady. "Patience, Lord Ashford. A murder is not solved in a moment. But I assure you, Hercule Poirot is working. The truth, it will come." Clara, the retired actress, dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief, her curls trembling. "It's horrible, poor Mr. Finch poisoned right under our noses. Who could do such a thing?" Her voice was dramatic, but her eyes flicked to the others, sharp and watchful. Baxter, the industrialist, slammed his fist on the table, rattling the teacups. "This is madness. I'm no killer, and I won't be treated like one. We need the police, not some fancy detective." Emily, the young heiress, sat pale and silent, her hands twisting her lace handkerchief. Her dark eyes avoided Poirot's, but he saw the fear in them, like a deer caught in a trap. Grayson, pouring tea, moved with his usual precision, but Poirot noticed a slight shake in his hand, a crack in his calm. Hastings leaned close, whispering, "What's the plan, Poirot?" "This lot's jumpy as cats." Poirot's mustache twitched. "We investigate, mon ami. The library, Finch's room, the grounds. Every corner of this manor holds clues, and we must watch the guests. One of them is not what they seem." After breakfast, Poirot returned to the library, now locked and guarded by Grayson. The room was unchanged, the oak table still bearing the faint bloodstain, now dried to a rusty brown. Finch's body had been moved to a cold cellar, covered with a sheet, awaiting a doctor who couldn't arrive until the storm-damaged roads cleared. Poirot knelt by the table, his gloved hands tracing the stain. "Too little blood for a wound," he murmured. "Poison, yes. But how was it given?" Hastings scratched his head. "No food or drink here. Could it be a needle? Something quick?" Poirot nodded. "Possible. A fast poison, like cyanide, would explain the blue lips. But where is the needle, or the vial?" He searched the table, the chairs, the floor, finding nothing but dust and the faint scratch mark he'd seen before, near the glass cabinet of rare books. He moved to the cabinet, its lock gleaming. The key from Finch's room, the small silver one with the rose engraving, felt heavy in his pocket. He tried it, but it didn't fit. "Curious," he said, tapping the glass. "This cabinet hides something, I think." Hastings peered inside. "Just old books. Worth a fortune, maybe, but why kill for them? Not the books, Hastings. Something else." Poirot's eyes lingered on The Art of Deception, its title a whisper in his mind. They left the library and headed to Finch's room again, searching for anything missed. The suitcase still held the folder of clippings about the jewel heist 20 years ago, when a fortune in diamonds vanished from Ashford Manor. The photograph of the young woman, so like Emily, was tucked among them. Poirot studied it, noting her serious eyes, her delicate features. "This is Mademoiselle Ashford, or a relative," he said. Finch was digging into the past, and it cost him his life. Hastings frowned. "The heist? You think that's what this is about? Old jewels? Jewels or the secrets tied to them," Poirot said. Finch was a journalist, a seeker of truth. He asked questions, and someone silenced him. They returned to the drawing room, where the guests were gathered, restless and tense. Clara was pacing, her silk dress swishing. "This is unbearable," she cried. "Locked in with a killer. Monsieur Poirot, you must do something." Poirot raised a hand. "I am doing, mademoiselle, but I need your help. Tell me, did anyone see Monsieur Finch this morning before the bell?" Baxter shrugged. "Saw him at breakfast, scribbling as usual. Didn't talk to him." Clara nodded. "He was in the hall after breakfast, heading to the library. I thought he was preparing for the game." Emily's voice was soft. "I saw him too in the corridor. He asked me about the manor's history. I didn't say much." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "What exactly did he ask, mademoiselle?" Emily hesitated, her fingers tightening on her handkerchief. "About my grandfather, the heist. He wanted to know if the jewels were ever found." "And were they?" Poirot asked, his voice gentle but firm. She shook her head. "No, at least I don't think so. It was before my time." Ashford cleared his throat, his face tight. "That old story again? The jewels were stolen, never recovered. My father lost a fortune, why would Finch care now?" Poirot smiled thinly. "That is what I will find out. But know this. The killer is clever, and they are watching. We must all be careful." Grayson entered, carrying a tray of sandwiches, his face blank. Poirot watched him closely, noting the way his eyes flicked to Emily, then away. "Monsieur Grayson," Poirot said, "you were in the kitchen this morning, yes? Did you prepare anything for Monsieur Finch?" Grayson shook his head. "No, sir. He took only tea at breakfast from the same pot as everyone." Poirot nodded, filing it away. "And the wine last night, who served it?" "I did," Grayson said, his voice steady. "But all glasses came from the same bottle." "Very well," Poirot said, but his mind was turning. Poison could be slipped into a single glass, not the bottle. He needed to find that bottle. As the guests ate, Poirot slipped away to the kitchen, Hastings trailing behind. The room was bustling, with maids chopping vegetables and a cook stirring a pot. Poirot questioned them, his voice polite but firm. "The wine from last night, where is the bottle?" The cook, a stout woman with flour on her apron, frowned. "Gone, sir. I sent the empties to the cellar this morning." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Gone? Show me." She led them to the cellar, a cold, dark room lined with wine racks. Poirot searched, finding several bottles from the previous night, but one was missing. The red served at dinner. "Curious," he murmured. "Someone has taken it." Hastings shivered. "The killer, you think? Covering their tracks?" "Perhaps," Poirot said. "Or leaving a new one." Back upstairs, Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing room. Again. "The wine bottle from last night is missing. This is no accident. Someone here knows why." Clara gasped, her hand to her mouth. "You think the poison was in the wine?" Baxter snorted. "I drank the same wine. I'm fine." Poirot's gaze was steady. "A single glass could be tampered with, Monsieur Baxter. Tell me, who poured your wine?" Grayson stepped forward. "I poured all the glasses, sir, but I swear I did nothing to them." Poirot nodded, but his eyes lingered on the butler's tense jaw. "We will see." The day wore on, the manor locked tight, the storm outside still raging, cutting them off from the village. Poirot and Hastings searched the grounds again, finding more footprints near the fountain, some fresh, some old. One set was small, like a woman's, with a distinctive heel mark. Clara's shoes? Hastings wondered. Or Emily's, Poirot said. Or someone else's, we must check. In the garden, they found a crumpled piece of paper near a rose bush half buried in the mud. Poirot unfolded it carefully. It was a note in Finch's handwriting. Meet me at the fountain midnight. I know about the jewels. The ink was smud gel and leg. Chapter 5. The Mastermind's taunt. The air in Ashford Manor grew heavier as the day wore on, the storm outside trapping the guests in a web of suspicion and fear. The library, where Mr. Leonard Finch's body had been found, was locked tight, its oak table still bearing the faint bloodstain that marked the end of the game and the start of a real nightmare. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand hall, his black suit as neat as ever, his mustache perfectly trimmed, but his green eyes burned with a quiet intensity. The little gray cells were working, piecing together the clues. Finch's notebook with its cryptic numbers 7 to 14, 21, 3 and the phrase "the mastermind watches," the missing wine bottle, the photograph of a young woman resembling Emily Ashford, and the crumpled note by the fountain that read, "Meet me at the fountain midnight." I know about the jewels. Someone was playing a dangerous game and Poirot was determined to win. Captain Hastings paced beside him, his sandy hair mussed, his usual grin replaced by a worried frown. "This is getting worse, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "Finch, poisoned, and now that note. Someone wanted him dead. What's next?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Next, mon ami, we find the truth. The killer is among us and they are bold. They leave clues to taunt us, but every clue is a mistake. We will use them to catch our mastermind." The guests were gathered in the drawing room, their faces pale, under the flickering light of the chandelier. Lord Reginald Ashford sat by the fireplace, his silver hair glinting, his sly smile gone, replaced by a tight-lipped frown. Miss Clara Duval, the retired actress, fanned herself with a silk handkerchief, her dramatic curls bouncing as she sighed loudly. Sir Harold Baxter, the industrialist, puffed on a cigar, his red face flushed with anger. Miss Emily Ashford, the young heiress, sat in a corner, her hands twisting her lace handkerchief, her dark eyes darting like a frightened bird's. Grayson, the butler, moved silently, serving tea with steady hands, but Poirot caught a flicker of tension in his jaw, a crack in his calm. A sharp knock at the door broke the silence. Grayson opened it, revealing Polly, the nervous maid, her apron crumpled, her eyes wide. "Monsieur Poirot, sir," she stammered, holding out a folded paper. "This was left in the hall by the staircase. It's for you." Poirot took the paper, his gloved fingers careful. The handwriting was elegant, like the first letter that had brought him to the manor, but sharper, more hurried. He unfolded it and read aloud, his French accent steady but grave. "Dear Monsieur Poirot, you think you are clever, but the mastermind is cleverer. Finch was only the first. Solve my puzzle, or another will fall. The numbers lead the way. Keep watching, detective. I am yours, the mastermind." A gasp rippled through the room. Clara dropped her fan, her hand flying to her mouth. "Another? Oh, heavens, we're all in danger." Baxter's cigar fell to the floor, his voice a growl. "This is outrageous. Some lunatic is playing with us. Poirot, you'd better stop this nonsense." Emily's hand shook, her handkerchief tearing slightly. "Why is this happening?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ashford stood, his face pale. "This is my home. I won't have it turned into a slaughterhouse. Poirot, what does this mean?" Poirot folded the note, slipping it into his pocket with Finch's notebook and the photograph. "It means, Lord Ashford, that our killer is bold and close. They know my methods and they challenge me directly. But Hercule Poirot does not lose to taunts." Hastings leaned close, his voice low. "Those numbers again, 7, 14, 21, 3, same as in Finch's notebook. What do they mean?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A cipher, Hastings. A code to something in this manner, or perhaps to the killer's plan. We must decode it, but first we protect the guests. No one is to be alone." He turned to Grayson. "Monsieur, ensure the staff stays in pairs. Lock all outer doors. The killer is here and we must keep them contained." Grayson nodded, his face blank but his eyes sharp. "Yes, sir. I'll see to it." Poirot addressed the guests, his voice calm but firm. You will stay in the drawing room or your rooms, always with another. Report anything strange to me at once. The mastermind is watching, but so am I. Clara's voice was shrill. Stay together? What if the killer is one of us? Baxter snorted. Of course it's one of us. That scribbler Finch poked his nose where it wasn't wanted, and now we're all targets. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Please, Monsieur Poirot, find them before anyone else gets hurt. Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice was steady. I will, mademoiselle, but you must all be honest. Secrets will only help the killer. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, their silence loud with unspoken thoughts. Poirot noted every look, Clara's quick glance at Baxter, Baxter's scowl at Ashford, Emily's trembling hands, Grayson's stillness. The puzzle was growing, but the pieces were starting to fit. Poirot and Hastings left the drawing room, heading to Ashford's study, a small room lined with books and maps, its desk cluttered with papers. Poirot wanted to search for anything tied to the jewel heist or the numbers. The study smelled of ink and leather with a faint whiff of cigar smoke. A portrait of a stern man, Ashford's father, Poirot guessed, hung above the fireplace, his eyes as sharp as his son's. Hastings rifled through papers, finding bills and letters, nothing suspicious. This is a needle in a haystack, Poirot. What are we looking for? Connections, Poirot said, his fingers brushing a locked drawer. He pulled out the silver key with the rose engraving, but it didn't fit. This key, he murmured, it is for something important. But what? He moved to a bookshelf, scanning titles. One book, A History of Ashford Manor, caught his eye. He pulled it out and a folded paper slipped to the floor. It was old, yellowed, with a sketch of the manor's floor plan. In the margin, someone had written, Vault, East Wing, 7 to 14. Poirot's pulse quickened. Hastings, look, part of our cipher. Hastings peered over. 714? Like the numbers in Finch's notebook. Is there a vault here? Poirot nodded, folding the paper. Perhaps. The jewels, the heist. They are at the heart of this. Finch found something, and it led to his death. They searched the study further, finding a photograph tucked behind a clock. A young woman, the same as in Finch's suitcase, with a man who looked like a younger Ashford. On the back was written, Reginald and Eleanor, 1905. Eleanor, Poirot said. Emily's mother, perhaps, or a sister? Hastings frowned. Why was Finch so interested in her? And why hide this? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Because, mon ami, the past is the key to the present. We must speak to Mademoiselle Ashford. They found Emily in her room, sitting by the window, her face pale. She flinched when Poirot knocked, but let them in. The room was small, with a narrow bed and a vanity covered in lace. A faint scent of lavender hung in the air. Mademoiselle, Poirot said gently, I must ask about your family. Who is Eleanor? Emily's eyes widened, her hands clutching her handkerchief. My mother. She died when I was young. Why? Poirot showed her the photograph. This was in your uncle's study and another in Finch's things. He was asking about the heist, yes? Did he mention your mother? Emily's voice trembled. He asked if she ever spoke of the jewels. I said no, she never talked about the manor. She left when I was a baby. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. And the heist, what do you know of it? Only what everyone knows, she said. Grandfather's diamonds were stolen. He lost everything. Uncle Reginald says it ruined the family. Poirot watched her closely, noting her quick breaths, her tight grip. Thank you, mademoiselle. Rest now, but stay with someone. The killer is near. Back in the hall, Hastings whispered. She's hiding something, isn't she? Perhaps, Poirot said. Or she is afraid. Fear can look like guilt. They returned to the drawing room where Clara was reciting a monologue to Baxter, who ignored her, puffing his cigar. Ashford stood by the window, staring at the rain. Grayson served tea, his movements silent. Poirot held up the new note. This was left for me. The mastermind is bold but careless. They leave clues, and clues will lead to their downfall. Clara gasped. What kind of clues? Are we safe? Poirot's smile was grim. Safe, no. But protected, yes, if you follow my instructions. Now tell me, did anyone leave this room since breakfast? Baxter shook his head. Been here all morning except for a quick smoke on the terrace. Clara nodded. I went to the garden briefly, but I was back before the bell. Emily said softly. I was in my room, then here. Ashford sighed. I checked my study, then came here. Grayson was with me. Grayson nodded. I was with Lord Ashford, then in the kitchen. Poirot's eyes narrowed, and yet a note was left in the hall. Someone moved unseen. The guests exchanged glances, their faces tight. Poirot continued. The numbers 714-21-3 are a cipher. I found 714 in a book linked to a vault in the east wing. Does anyone know of this vault? Ashford's face paled. A vault? There's nothing like that here. My father never mentioned it. Clara laughed nervously. A hidden vault? Like in a play, how exciting. Baxter snorted. Sounds like nonsense. If there were jewels, they'd be long gone. Emily said nothing, her eyes fixed on the floor. Poirot noted her silence, his mind turning. As evening fell, Poirot and Hastings searched the east wing, a dusty corridor with locked doors and faded portraits. They found a heavy oak door, its lock old but sturdy. The silver key didn't fit, but Poirot tapped the wall, listening for hollow sounds. Something is here, he said. The cipher points to it. Hastings shivered. This place gives me the creeps. You think the jewels are still here? P.O. Chapter 6. Shadows of the Past. The storm outside Ashford Manor raged on, its howling winds rattling the windows and casting eerie shadows across the grand halls. The air inside was thick with fear, the scent of old wood and candle wax mingling with the sharp tang of suspicion. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, his black suit pristine, his mustache perfectly groomed, his green eyes sharp as he studied the latest note pinned to the oak table with a letter opener. One down, more to go. The vault holds the truth. Find it, Poirot, or lose another. The words were a taunt, a dare from the killer calling themselves the Mastermind. The death of Mr. Leonard Finch, the journalist, had turned Lord Ashford's playful murder mystery game into a deadly reality, and Poirot's little gray cells were working furiously to unravel the truth. Captain Hastings stood beside him, his sandy hair messy, his face pale. Another note, Poirot, he said, his voice low. This Mastermind's got nerve, leaving it right here after Finch's murder. What's this vault they keep mentioning? Poirot's lips curved slightly, but his eyes were grim. The vault, mon ami, is the heart of this puzzle. The numbers 714-21-3 from Finch's notebook, the sketch in Ashford's study with 714, they point to a secret in this manner. The jewel heist, the photograph of the woman like Emily, this note, it is all connected to the past. The guests were gathered in the drawing room, their faces a mix of fear and frustration. Lord Reginald Ashford stood by the fireplace, his silver hair glinting, his usual sly smile replaced by a tense frown. Miss Clara Duval, the retired actress, sat fanning herself, her silk dress shimmering, her dramatic sighs filling the silence. Sir Harold Baxter, the industrialist, paced, his red face flushed, his cigar sending clouds of smoke into the air. Miss Emily Ashford, the young heiress, sat in a corner, her hands twisting her lace handkerchief, her dark eyes wide with fear. Grayson, the butler, moved silently, refilling teacups, but Poirot noted the tightness in his jaw, a flicker of unease in his steady hands. Poirot held up the new note, his voice calm, but commanding. This was found in the library, pinned to the table. The Mastermind grows bold but careless. They speak of a vault, and I believe it is real. Lord Ashford, what do you know of a vault in the East Wing? Ashford's face paled, his hands clenching. A vault? I told you, Monsieur Poirot, there's no such thing. My father never spoke of one. This is nonsense. Clara leaned forward, her curls bouncing. A hidden vault? Oh, how thrilling. Like a treasure hunt in a play. Baxter snorted, his voice gruff. Treasure? If there were jewels, they were. Stolen years ago. This is a waste of time. Emily's voice was soft, trembling. Uncle, are you sure? Grandfather. He had secrets. Mother said he hid things he didn't trust anyone with. Ashford's eyes snapped to her, sharp and cold. Your mother was a dreamer, Emily. She filled your head with stories. There's no vault? Poirot watched the exchange, noting Emily's flinch, Ashford's quick anger. Mademoiselle Ashford, he said gently, what did your mother say about these secrets? Emily hesitated, her fingers tearing the edge of her handkerchief. She said grandfather built hiding places in the manor for important things, but she never told me where. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The photograph of Eleanor, Emily's mother, found in Finch's suitcase and Ashford's study was a link. Finch had been digging into the jewel heist from 20 years ago, when a fortune in diamonds vanished from the manor. The numbers, the vault, Eleanor's secrets, they were pieces of the same puzzle. Hastings whispered, You think the jewels are still here, Poirot? Is that why Finch was killed? Perhaps, Poirot said, his eyes on the guests. Or perhaps the jewels are a mask for a deeper truth. We must find this vault. He turned to Grayson. Monsieur, you have served here 20 years, yes? Did you ever hear of a vault or hidden room? Grayson's face was blank, but his eyes flicked to Ashford. No, sir. Not in my time. The manor is old, though. There could be places I don't know. Poirot's mustache twitched. Very well. We will search the East Wing again. But first I must question you all. The Mastermind is among us, and they are watching. Clara gasped, her fan snapping shut. One of us? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, that's terrifying. Baxter stopped pacing, his cigar glowing. You're saying one of us poisoned Finch? That's absurd. I was on the terrace all morning. Clara nodded quickly. And I was in the garden, practicing my role. I saw no one near the library. Emily's voice was barely audible. I was in my room, then the drawing room. I didn't see anything. Ashford spread his hands. I was in my study, then with Grayson. We've told you this. Grayson bowed slightly. As Lord Ashford says, sir. I was with him, then in the kitchen. Poirot's eyes moved from face to face, searching for lies. And yet, a note was left in the library after it was locked. Someone moved unseen, and Finch's death was no accident. Tell me, did anyone speak to him after breakfast? Silence. Then Clara said, I saw him in the hall scribbling in that notebook. He seemed excited, like he'd found something. Baxter grunted. He was always nosing around. Asked me about my business once, but I told him to shove off. Emily's eyes dropped. He asked me about Mother again, about the heist. I didn't know what to say. Poirot nodded, filing every word away. Monsieur Finch was close to a truth, and it cost him his life. We must find what he knew. He led Hastings to the East Wing, the corridor dark and dusty, its walls lined, with faded portraits of Ashfords long gone. The heavy oak door they'd found before stood at the end, its lock old but solid. Poirot tried the silver key with the rose engraving again, but it didn't fit. He tapped the wall, listening for hollow sounds, his fingers brushing the cold stone. The sketch said 714, he murmured, perhaps a measurement or a code for the lock. Hastings frowned, kicking the door lightly. Could be anywhere in this old pile. This place is full of secrets. Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the portraits. One, of a woman with Emily's dark eyes, caught his attention. The plaque read, Eleanor Ashford, 1880-1910. Eleanor, he said softly. She is the key. They returned to the study, searching for more clues. Poirot found a locked box under the desk, its surface engraved with a rose. The silver key fit perfectly, clicking as it turned. Inside was a bundle of letters, yellowed with age, tied with a red ribbon like the one on Finch's wrist. Poirot read one, his eyes narrowing. It was from Eleanor to her father, dated 1905. The jewels are safe, hidden where no one will look. Forgive me, but I had to protect us. Hastings whistled. She hid the jewels? But why? Poirot's mind raced. Perhaps she stole them. Or perhaps she was protecting them from someone else. The heist was never solved, and now Finch is dead for asking about it. They took the letters to Emily's room, knocking gently. She opened the door, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said, showing her the letters. "These are from your mother. She speaks of hiding the jewels. Do you know anything of this?" Emily's hand shook as she took the letters, her eyes scanning the words. I didn't know. She never told me. She left when I was a baby, and Father said she was sick, that she couldn't stay." Poirot's voice was gentle. "Sick or hiding? Your mother was part of this manor's secrets, and Finch was close to them. Did he say anything else to you?" Emily hesitated, then whispered. He said he found a map in the library. He wouldn't show me, but he was excited, like he'd solved something." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A map. Thank you, mademoiselle. Stay with Clara tonight. No one must be alone." Back in the drawing room, the guests were tense, their voices. Oh. Clara was telling a story about her theater days, but her laughter was forced. Baxter smoked, his eyes on the door. Ashford stood by the window, staring at the rain. Grayson served dinner, his movements silent but precise. Poirot held up the letters. These were written by Eleanor Ashford about the jewels. Someone in this manor knows more than they say. Speak now, or the mastermind will strike again. Ashford's face tightened. My sister? She was troubled, left the family. Those letters mean nothing. Clara's eyes widened. Eleanor was your sister. Oh, how tragic. Did she steal the jewels? Baxter snorted. Sounds like family drama. None of my business. Emily said nothing, her eyes on the letters, tears welling. Poirot watched her, noting her silence, her fear. As night fell, Poirot and Hastings searched the library again, looking for Finch's map. They found nothing, but Poirot noticed a book out of place. The Art of Deception, the same one, from the glass cabinet. He opened it, finding a folded paper inside. A crude map of the manor with a mark in the east wing labeled Vault, 7 to 1421. The last number, 3, was missing. This is it, Poirot said, his voice low. Finch found this, and it led to his death. Hastings shivered. The vault again. We need to find it, Poirot. They returned to the east wing, the map guiding them to a wall behind a portrait of Eleanor. Poirot pressed the stones, feeling for a catch. One clicked, and a panel slid open, revealing a narrow passage. Inside was a locked door, its surface engraved with numbers, 7, 14, 21, 3. Poirot tried the silver key, but it didn't fit. The cipher, he said. We must solve it. Back in the drawing room, the guests were restless, the storm louder. Poirot showed them the map, watching their faces. This was Finch's secret. The vault exists and the killer knows it. Who here has been in the East Wing today? Silence, then Clara said, I walked there this morning just exploring. Chapter 7. A second victim. The storm over Ashford Manor grew fiercer, its winds howling like a chorus of ghosts, rattling the windows and casting flickering shadows across the grand halls. The air inside was heavy with dread, the scent of candle wax and fear clinging to every corner. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room, his black suit pristine, his mustache neatly trimmed, his green eyes sharp as he clutched the latest note. From the killer calling themselves the Mastermind. You're close, Poirot, but not close enough. The vault is mine. Sleep lightly. The words were a taunt, a challenge, and they burned in Poirot's mind. The murder of Mr. Leonard Finch, the journalist, had been only the beginning, and the clues, the numbers 71421-3, the map to a hidden vault, the photograph of Eleanor Ashford, the crumpled note by the fountain, were pieces of a puzzle that Poirot was determined to solve. Captain Hastings paced nearby, his sandy hair disheveled, his face pale with worry. Another note, Poirot, he said, his voice low. This mastermind's got us running in circles. That vault in the east wing, what if it's a trap? Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes gleaming. A trap, perhaps, mon ami, but every trap reveals the hunter. The mastermind is bold, but their boldness will be their undoing. We must find the vault and unlock its secrets. The guests were gathered in the drawing room, their faces drawn, their voices hushed. Lord Reginald Ashford stood by the fireplace, his silver hair glinting, his usual sly charm replaced by a nervous frown. Miss Clara Duval, the retired actress, sat fanning herself with a silk handkerchief, her dramatic curls trembling, her eyes darting to the others. Miss Emily Ashford, the young heiress, sat in a corner, her hands twisting her lace handkerchief, her dark eyes wide with fear. Sir Harold Baxter, the industrialist, was absent, having stormed off to the terrace for a cigar, his gruff complaints echoing in the hall. Grayson, the butler, moved silently, serving tea with steady hands, but Poirot noted a flicker of tension in his jaw, a crack in his calm. Poirot held up the note, his voice firm. The mastermind has struck again, leaving this in the hall. They speak of the vault and they warn us to sleep lightly. This is no idle threat, we must stay vigilant. Clara gasped, her fan snapping shut. Another threat? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, we're all doomed. Who's next? Emily's voice was soft, trembling. Why is this happening? First Mr. Finch, now this. I can't bear it. Ashford's face tightened, his hands clenching. This is my home, Poirot. I won't let some madman terrorize us. Find this vault, find the killer. Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the room. The vault is in the east wing, marked by the numbers 7-14-21-3. We found a map in Finch's book and a passage behind a portrait of Eleanor Ashford. But the door is locked and our key does not fit. Someone here knows more than they say. Clara leaned forward, her curls bouncing. Eleanor? Your sister Reggie? Was she mixed up in this jewel heist business? Ashford's eyes flashed. Leave. My sister out of this. She was troubled, yes, but she's long gone. This is about Finch, not her. Emily's hands shook, her handkerchief tearing. Uncle, please. Mother didn't steal anything. She was trying to protect us. Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice was firm. Mademoiselle, your mother's letters spoke of hiding the jewels. If you know anything, even a small thing, it could save lives. Emily shook her head, tears welling. I don't know. She never told me where. I was too young. Grayson stepped forward, his voice low. Shall I check the east wing again, sir? The staff can help search. Poirot's eyes narrowed. No, Monsieur Grayson. The staff will stay in pairs under watch. The killer is clever, and we must not give them chances. As the guests murmured, a loud thud echoed from outside, followed by a sharp cry. Poirot was on his feet, Hastings behind him as they ran toward the sound. It came from the garden near the terrace. The guests followed, Clara's heels clicking, Emily's breath hitching, Ashford's face pale. Grayson stayed close, his eyes sharp. In the garden, under the dim glow of a lantern, lay Sir Harold Baxter sprawled on the wet grass, his cigar smoldering nearby. A letter opener, engraved with Ashford's initials, protruded from his chest, blood pooling around it. His red face was frozen in a grimace, his gold watch glinting in the light. The guests gasped, Clara screaming, Emily swaying as if she might faint. Hastings knelt, checking for a pulse. He's gone, Poirot. Stabbed, right through the heart. Poirot's eyes scanned the scene, his mind racing. The letter opener was clean of fingerprints, wiped deliberately. The grass was trampled, but only Baxter's heavy boots left clear prints. A faint scent lingered, something sweet, like perfume. Poirot bent closer, noting a tiny scratch on Baxter's hand, barely visible. Curious, he murmured. Not just a stab wound. Clara sobbed, her handkerchief pressed to her mouth. Another murder. We're all going to die. Ashford's voice was hoarse. Baxter? Why him? He was just a businessman, Emily whispered. It's the mastermind. They're picking us off. Poirot stood, his voice cold. This is no random act. Baxter was targeted, and the letter opener is a message. Lord Ashford. Where was this kept? Ashford stared at the weapon, his face white. In my study. On the desk. Anyone could have taken it. Poirot nodded, his eyes moving to Grayson. And you, monsieur? Did you see anyone near the study today? Grayson's face was blank, but his hands twitched. No, sir. I was with the staff or Lord Ashford all day. Hastings whispered. The perfume, Poirot, smells like Clara's. Poirot's mustache twitched. Or someone wants us to think so. We must search Baxter's room. They locked the garden, leaving Baxter's body covered with a tarp until a doctor could arrive. In Baxter's room, Poirot found a briefcase filled with papers, contracts, business deals, and a letter from Ashford promising a partnership in a new venture. One document mentioned the jewel heist, noting Baxter's company had supplied security for the manor 20 years ago. Interesting, Poirot said. Baxter was connected to the heist. Hastings frowned. You think he knew where the jewels were? Or who took them? Poirot said, slipping the letter into his pocket with the others. Back in the drawing room, the guests were in chaos. Clara was sobbing, Ashford pacing, Emily silent, her eyes fixed on the floor. Poirot held up the letter. Monsieur Baxter was linked to the heist, as was Finch. The mastermind is targeting those tied to the past. Who else knows about the jewels? Clara shook her head, her curls limp. Not me. I was on stage back then, not stealing diamonds. Ashford's voice was sharp. This is absurd. My father lost everything in that heist. I have nothing to hide. Emily's voice was soft. Mother. She said grandfather blamed someone, but she never told me who. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Blamed someone. This is key. We must find the vault, and we must do it now. He led Hastings to the east wing, the map from Finch's book guiding them to the hidden passage behind Eleanor's portrait. The locked door with the numbers 7, 14, 21, 3 stood firm. Poirot studied the lock, his fingers tracing the engravings. A combination, perhaps, he said. The numbers are the key. Hastings tried turning the lock, but it didn't budge. We need the code, Poirot. Those numbers, maybe they're steps or a sequence. Poirot nodded, his mind turning. Or dates, or initials. The heist was in 1905. Perhaps 714 is July 14th, but 21-3. We need more. They returned to the drawing room where Grayson was calming the guests. Poirot questioned Clara closely. Mademoiselle, your perfume. It was in the garden. Were you there tonight? Clara's eyes widened. No, I was here. With Emily. That's my perfume, yes, but I didn't go near the garden. Emily nodded, her voice soft. She was with me, Monsieur Poirot, all evening. Poirot's gaze moved to Grayson. And you, monsieur? Did you see Monsieur Baxter leave for the terrace? Grayson shook his head. No, sir, I was in the kitchen, then here. Ashford interrupted. Enough. Poirot, you're accusing everyone. Find the killer, not my staff. Poirot's smile was cold. I accuse no one, Lord Ashford. I observe, and I see much. As midnight approached, Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing room, locking the doors. No one leaves tonight, he said. The mastermind is among us, and they are desperate, but Hercule Poirot is more desperate to catch them. The manor was silent, the storm outside a roar. The shadows of the past were closing in, and Poirot knew the next move would be the killer's, or his own. Chapter 8. The cipher unraveled. The storm battered Ashford Manor, its winds shrieking like a warning, rattling the windows and casting wild shadows across the dim halls. The air inside was thick with tension, the scent of candle wax and fear hanging heavy. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room, his black suit crisp, his mustache perfectly groomed, his green eyes sharp as he clutched the growing collection of clues. Finch's notebook with the numbers 7, 14, 21, 3, and the phrase the mastermind watches, the photograph of Eleanor Ashford, the map to a hidden vault, and the taunting notes from the killer calling themselves the mastermind. The murders of Mr. Leonard Finch, the journalist, and Sir Harold Baxter, the industrialist, had turned the manor into a trap, and Poirot's little gray cells were racing to catch the killer before they struck again. Captain Hastings sat nearby, his sandy hair messy, his face pale with worry. 2 dead, Poirot, he said, his voice low. Finch poisoned, Baxter stabbed, and those notes keep coming. This mastermind's playing a deadly game. Have you cracked those numbers yet? Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes gleaming. The numbers, mon ami, are the key. 7, 14, 21, 3. They are a cipher, pointing to the vault and the truth behind these murders. Tonight we unravel it. The remaining guests, Lord Reginald Ashford, Miss Clara Duval, Miss Emily Ashford, and Grayson, the butler, were gathered in the drawing room, their faces drawn, their voices hushed. Ashford stood by the fireplace, his silver hair glinting, his usual sly charm replaced by a nervous scowl. Clara sat fanning herself, her silk dress shimmering, her dramatic sighs barely hiding her fear. Emily sat in a corner, her hands twisting her lace handkerchief, her dark eyes wide with dread. Grayson moved silently, serving tea, but Poirot noted the tightness in his jaw, a flicker of unease in his steady hands. Poirot held up the latest note, his voice firm. The mastermind taunts us again, speaking of the vault. They believe they are clever, but every note, every clue brings us closer to them. Tonight we solve the cipher and find the vault. Clara gasped, her fan snapping shut. The vault? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, do you really think it's here? Full of jewels, maybe? Ashford's face tightened, his hands clenching. This is nonsense. There's no vault in my manor. My father would have told me. Emily's voice was soft, trembling. Uncle, mother said grandfather hid things. Maybe there is a vault. Poirot's eyes narrowed, watching her closely. Mademoiselle, your mother's letters spoke of hiding the jewels. The map we found points to the east wing, marked with 7-14-21. The number 3 is missing, but I believe we are close. Grayson stepped forward, his voice low. Shall I search the east wing again, sir? The staff can assist. Poirot shook his head. No, Monsieur Grayson. The killer is among us, and we must move carefully. The cipher is our guide. Hastings leaned, close, whispering, What's your plan, Poirot? Those numbers, dates, steps, what? Poirot's lips curved slightly. They are dates, I think. The heist was in 1905. 7-14 could be July 14th, a significant day. 21-3 is less clear, but we will find the answer. He led Hastings to the library, now a grim reminder of Finch's death. The oak table still bore the faint bloodstain, the air heavy with dust and secrets. Poirot pulled out Finch's notebook, studying the numbers 7-14-21-3. He compared them to the map from The Art of Deception, which marked a vault in the east wing. The numbers are a sequence, he said. Perhaps a lock combination, or a reference to something in the manor's history. Hastings frowned, peering at the map. The east wing again. That locked door behind Eleanor's portrait. Those numbers were carved on it. Maybe they're the code? Poirot nodded, his mind racing. We must return there, but first we need more about the heist. They went to Ashford's study, its walls lined with books and maps, the portrait of his father glaring down. Poirot searched the desk, finding a ledger from 1905, the year of the heist. It listed guests at a grand party, including names that stood out. Harold Baxter, then a young security supplier, and Leonard Finch's father, a reporter covering the event. Curious, Poirot said. Both victims were tied to the heist. Hastings whistled. Their fathers were there? That's no coincidence. Poirot nodded, flipping through the ledger. A note in the margin, in faded ink, read, July 14th, 1905. Eleanor took the key. Vault sealed. His pulse quickened. 7-14 is July 14th, 1905, the day of the heist, or when Eleanor hid the jewels. They returned to the east wing, the map guiding them to the hidden passage behind Eleanor's portrait. The locked door loomed, its surface engraved with 7-14-21-3. Poirot tried the silver key with the rose engraving, but it still didn't fit. He studied the numbers, his fingers tracing them. A combination lock, he said. We must try. 7-14-21-3. Hastings turned the dial, entering the numbers in sequence. The lock clicked and the door creaked open, revealing a small dusty chamber. Inside was a metal box, its surface etched with a rose. The silver key fit perfectly, unlocking it with a soft snap. Inside were papers, letters, a diary, and a small, velvet pouch. Poirot opened the diary, recognizing Eleanor's handwriting. An entry dated July 14, 1905 read, "I hid the jewels in the vault, safe from father's enemies. Baxter knows too much, but he won't talk. The key is with me." Poirot's eyes gleamed. Eleanor hid the jewels to protect them. Baxter's father was involved, and Finch's father reported it. The mastermind is settling old scores. Hastings opened the pouch, revealing a single diamond, glinting in the dim light. "One jewel," he said. "Where's the rest?" Poirot shook his head. "This is a clue, not the prize. The vault holds secrets, not treasure." They returned to the drawing room, the guests restless, the storm louder. Poirot held up the diary and the diamond. "The cipher is solved. 714 is July 14th, 1905, the heist. 21-3 refers to a sequence in the lock. Eleanor hid the jewels and Baxter and Finch's fathers were involved. The mastermind kills to protect this secret." Clara gasped, her curls trembling. "A diamond. Oh, how beautiful. But who's doing this?" Ashford's face was white. "My sister? She was no thief. This is madness." Emily's voice was soft, tears falling. "Mother, she was trying to save us. She never told me." Grayson's hands shook slightly as he poured tea. Poirot watched him, noting the flicker in his eyes. "Monsieur Grayson," he said, "you were here in 1905, yes? Did you know Eleanor?" Grayson's face was blank, but his voice was tight. "I was a young footman then, sir. I knew her, but not well. She was kind, but troubled." Poirot nodded, his mind turning. "And the vault? Did you ever see it?" "No, sir," Grayson said, his eyes dropping. "I know nothing of it." Poirot's gaze lingered, sensing a lie. He turned to the guests. "Someone here knows the vault's secret. Speak now, or the mastermind will strike again." Silence, thick and heavy, filled the room. Clara's fan fluttered. Ashford's hands clenched. Emily's tears fell. Grayson's stillness was unnerving. The clock struck 10, and a loud crash echoed from upstairs. The guests froze, Clara screaming, Emily gasping. Poirot ran toward the sound, Hastings behind him, the guests following. It came from Emily's room. The door was open, a window shattered, rain pouring in. A note lay on the bed, in the mastermind's handwriting. "The vault is open, Poirot, but you're too late. Another will fall by midnight." Poirot's eyes burned with determination. "The mastermind is desperate," he said. "They know we are close. But Hercule Poirot will not be outsmarted." The manor was a maze of secrets, the past bleeding into the present, and the killer was watching. But Poirot was ready, his little gray cells sharper than ever. Chapter 9. The Actress's Secret. The storm outside Ashford Manor roared like a living beast, its winds slamming against the windows, casting wild shadows across the grand halls. The air inside was thick with fear, the scent of candle wax and damp stone mingling with the sharp edge of suspicion. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room, his black suit immaculate, his mustache perfectly groomed, his green eyes sharp as he held the latest note from the killer calling themselves the Mastermind. "The vault is open, Poirot, but you're too late. Another will fall by midnight." The murders of Mr. Leonard Finch, the journalist, and Sir Harold Baxter, the industrialist, had turned the manor into a deadly trap, and the clues, the numbers 7, 14, 21, 3, the map to a hidden vault, the photograph of Eleanor Ashford, the diary revealing her role in the 1905 jewel heist, were pieces of a puzzle Poirot was determined to solve. Captain Hastings stood beside him, his sandy hair messy, his face pale with worry. "Another threat, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "Finch poisoned, Baxter stabbed, and now this. The mastermind's not slowing down. That vault, we found it, but what's next?" Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes gleaming. "The vault holds the truth, mon ami, but the mastermind plays a clever game. They want us to find it, yet they kill to keep it hidden. We must look closer, at the guests, at their secrets. The remaining guests, Lord Reginald Ashford, Miss Clara Duval, Miss Emily Ashford, and Grayson the butler, sat in the drawing room, their faces drawn, their voices hushed. Ashford stood by the fireplace, his silver hair glinting, his usual sly charm replaced by a tense scowl. Clara sat fanning herself, her silk dress shimmering, her dramatic sighs more forced than ever. Emily sat in a corner, her hands twisting her lace handkerchief, her dark eyes wide with fear. Grayson moved silently, serving tea. But Poirot noted, the slight shake in his hands, a crack in his calm. Poirot held up the note, his voice firm. The mastermind grows desperate. They speak of the vault which we found in the East Wing, unlocked by the cipher 714-21-3. Eleanor Ashford's diary confirms she hid the jewels in 1905, and Finch and Baxter were tied to that heist. But someone here knows more. Speak now, or the killer will strike again. Clara gasped, her fan snapping shut. Oh, Monsieur Poirot, this is dreadful. How can you think one of us is a murderer? I'm just an actress. Ashford's face tightened, his hands clenching. This is my home. I won't have it slandered. Eleanor was troubled, not a thief. Emily's voice was soft, trembling. Mother, she was protecting us. I don't know who's doing this, but please stop them. Grayson's voice was low, steady. Shall I check the vault again, sir? To ensure it's secure? Poirot's eyes narrowed. No, Monsieur Grayson. The vault is empty, but its secrets are not. We must look to the living, not the walls, Hastings whispered. You're thinking of Clara, aren't you? That perfume in the garden where Baxter died? It's hers? Poirot nodded slightly. Or someone wishes us to think so. Mademoiselle Duval's theatrics hide something, I think. We must press her. He turned to Clara, his voice gentle but firm. Mademoiselle, you are a woman of the stage, yes? You play parts, hide truths behind smiles. Tell me, what do you know of Eleanor Ashford? Clara's fan froze, her curls trembling. Eleanor? Why, nothing. I never met her. I was on stage in London in 1905, far from this dreary manor. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Yet your perfume was in the garden where Monsieur Baxter died, and your bracelet with its rose design matches the key we found. Are these coincidences? Clara's face paled, her hand touching her bracelet. A silver rose, like the key in Poirot's pocket. My perfume? Oh, anyone could have used it. It's common enough, and this bracelet, it's just a trinket. Poirot stepped closer, his voice soft but piercing. A trinket, perhaps, but one tied to this manor. Tell me, mademoiselle, were you ever here before? In 1905, perhaps under another name? The room fell silent, the guest's eyes on Clara. Her smile faltered, her hands trembling. Another name? You're accusing me of something awful, monsieur. I'm Clara Duval, nothing more. Ashford's voice was sharp. Enough, Poirot. Clara's a guest, not a criminal. You're grasping at straws. Emily's voice was soft, almost a whisper. Monsieur Poirot, please, don't upset her. She's been kind to me. Grayson stood still, his eyes on Clara. A flicker of something, recognition, in his gaze. Poirot noted it, his mind racing. Very well, Poirot said, his voice calm. But I will find the truth, mademoiselle. Secrets do not stay hidden. From Hercule Poirot. Hastings leaned close, whispering, She's nervous, Poirot, you hit a nerve. Poirot nodded, his eyes never leaving Clara. We will speak to her alone, mon ami. But first we must secure the manor. He ordered Grayson to lock all doors and windows, ensuring no one could slip out into the storm. The guests were to stay, in pairs with Clara and Emily together, Ashford and Grayson nearby. Poirot and Hastings returned to the East Wing, checking the vault again. The small chamber was empty except for the metal box, which held Eleanor's diary, letters, and the single diamond. Poirot reread the diary, finding another entry. Clara came to the manor begging for help. She knows too much. I gave her the bracelet to keep her silent. Poirot's pulse quickened. Clara was here in 1905. She knew Eleanor. Hastings whistled. She lied. But why? And is she the mastermind? Not yet clear, Poirot said, but she is a piece of the puzzle. They went to Clara's room, knocking firmly. She opened the door, her face pale, her curls limp. Monsieur Poirot, what now? I'm trying to rest. Poirot held up the diary, his voice steady. Mademoiselle, this is Eleanor Ashford's diary. It says you were here in 1905, that you knew her secrets. Why did you lie? Clara's eyes widened, her hands clutching her dress. Lied? I don't know what you mean. I was never here. Poirot stepped closer, his eyes piercing. Eleanor gave you a bracelet, yes? The one you wear now with the rose. She wrote of it to keep you silent. Silent about what? Clara swayed, sinking onto a chair. Her voice was a whisper. You don't understand. It was so long ago. I was young, desperate. I came to the manor, yes, but not as Clara Duval. I was Clara Bell, a nobody, working in a theater troupe. Eleanor was kind, but she was in trouble. Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. Trouble with the jewels? Clara nodded, tears welling. She said her father's enemies wanted the diamonds. She hid them, but someone, Baxter's father, I think, knew. He threatened her. I saw them arguing at the party, the night of the heist. Eleanor gave me the bracelet to keep quiet, to say I saw nothing. Hastings frowned. Why didn't you tell anyone? Clara's voice broke. I was scared. Baxter's father was powerful, and Eleanor said he'd ruin me. I left, changed my name, built a career. When Reggie invited me here, I thought it was just a game, not this. Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind was sharp. And Finch? Did he know your secret? Clara shook her head. He asked about the heist, but I told him nothing. I swear I didn't kill him, or Baxter. Poirot nodded, filing her words away. Thank you, mademoiselle. Stay with Emily tonight. The mastermind is still among us. Back in the drawing room, the guests were restless, the storm louder. Poirot shared Clara's story, watching their faces. Ashford's eyes widened. Clara was here? With Eleanor? Why didn't she say? Emily's voice was soft. She was protecting Mother, maybe, like I would. Grayson's hands shook slightly as he poured tea. Poirot turned to him. Monsieur Grayson, you were here in 1905. Did you know Clara Bell? Grayson's face was blank, but his eyes flickered. Vaguely, sir. She was a guest, nothing more. Poirot's mustache twitched. Nothing more, we shall see. As midnight approached, the manor grew colder, the shadows deeper. Poirot gathered the guests, locking the doors. The mastermind promised another death by midnight. We will stay here together, until dawn. Clara sobbed. Emily clung to her. Ashford paced, Grayson stood still. The clock ticked, each second heavy. At 5 minutes to midnight, a loud bang echoed from the hall. Poirot was on his feet, Hastings behind him, as they ran toward the sound. A window in the corridor was shattered. Rain pouring in. A new note lay on the floor. You found her secret, Poirot, but not mine. The vault is empty, but the game goes on. Poirot's eyes burned with determination. The mastermind is close, mon ami. Clara has secrets, but the killer is another. We are near the truth. The manor was a web of lies, the past bleeding into the present, and Poirot was ready, his little gray cells sharper than ever. Chapter 10. The Butler's Tale. The storm outside Ashford Manor raged on, its howling winds battering the ancient walls, shaking the windows like a warning from the past. Inside, the air was thick with fear, the scent of candle wax, old books, and nervous sweat filling the grand halls. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room, his black suit as crisp as ever, his mustache perfectly groomed, his green eyes sharp with focus. In his pocket were the clues that had piled up. Finch's notebook with the numbers 7, 14, 21, 3 and the phrase "the mastermind watches," the photograph of Eleanor Ashford, the map to the hidden vault. Eleanor's diary revealing her role in hiding. The jewels and the mastermind's taunting notes, the latest reading. You found her secret, Poirot, but not mine. The vault is empty, but the game goes on. The murders of Mr. Leonard Finch, the journalist, and Sir Harold Baxter, the industrialist, had turned the manor into a deadly maze, and Poirot's little gray cells were working furiously to catch the killer before they struck again. Captain Hastings stood nearby, his sandy hair messy, his face pale with worry. "Another note, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "Finch poisoned, Baxter stabbed, and now they're mocking us from the shadows. This mastermind's always one step ahead. What about Grayson? He's been too quiet, don't you think?" Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes gleaming. "Oui, mon ami, the butler is a puzzle. His silence hides much, I think. He was here in 1905 during the heist. We must press him, for the truth lies in the shadows of the past." The remaining guests, Lord Reginald Ashford, Miss Clara Duval, and Miss Emily Ashford, sat in the drawing room, their faces drawn, their voices hushed. Grayson, the butler, moved silently, clearing teacups, his pale face as blank as ever, but Poirot noted the slight tremor in his hands, a crack in his calm. Ashford stood by the fireplace, his silver hair glinting, his usual sly charm replaced by a tense scowl. Clara sat fanning herself, her silk dress shimmering, her dramatic sighs barely hiding her fear. Emily sat in a corner, her hands twisting, her lace handkerchief, her dark eyes wide with dread. Poirot held up the latest note, his voice firm. "The mastermind grows bold, leaving this after shattering a window. They know we found the vault, but they claim it is empty. I do not believe them. The vault holds the truth, and someone here knows it." Clara gasped, her fan snapping shut. "Empty? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, this is terrifying. Are we all to be murdered?" Ashford's face tightened, his hands clenching. "This is my home. I won't let some lunatic ruin it. Poirot, you must end this." Emily's voice was soft, trembling. "The vault. Mother's secrets. It's all connected, isn't it?" Poirot nodded, his eyes on Grayson. "Oui, mademoiselle, and the past holds the key. Monsieur Grayson, you have served the Ashfords for 20 years, yes? You were here in 1905 when the jewels were stolen. Tell me, what do you know of Eleanor Ashford and the heist?" Grayson froze, his hands pausing on a teacup. His face remained blank, but his eyes flicked to Ashford, then back to Poirot. "I was a young footman then, sir," he said, his voice low. "I knew Miss Eleanor, but only as a servant knows a lady. The heist was a scandal, but I saw nothing." Poirot stepped closer, his voice gentle but piercing. "Nothing, monsieur? Yet, you were here in the manor when the jewels vanished. Eleanor's diary says she hid them, and Clara Duval, then Clara Bell, was paid to stay silent. You saw her, yes? A young actress visiting the manor?" Grayson's jaw tightened, his hands trembling slightly. I remember Miss Bell, yes. She came for a party. But I had no part in their secrets." Ashford's voice was sharp. "Leave Grayson alone, Poirot. He's loyal, been with us for years. You're chasing ghosts." Clara's eyes widened, her curls trembling. "Grayson knew me then? Oh, how strange. I barely remember him." Emily's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Monsieur Grayson, you were kind to Mother. She wrote about you in her letters, said you helped her." Grayson's face paled, his eyes dropping. Poirot's mustache twitched. "Helped her, mademoiselle? How?" Emily hesitated, her fingers tearing her handkerchief. She said, "You carried messages for her to someone outside the manor. She trusted you." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Messages, Monsieur Grayson? To whom? And about what?" Grayson's voice was tight, his hands clenching. I did as Miss Eleanor asked. She was kind, but troubled. She gave me letters to deliver, to a man in the village. I didn't read them." Poirot stepped closer, his voice like a blade. "A man, you say? Who?" "And do not lie, monsieur, for Hercule Poirot sees through lies." Grayson's face crumpled, his calm breaking. "It was Mr. Baxter, Sir Harold's father. He was a security man, hired for the party. Miss Eleanor was scared of him. She said he knew about the jewels, that he'd ruin her if she didn't pay." The room fell silent, the guests' eyes wide. Clara gasped, her fan falling to the floor. "Baxter's father? A blackmailer?" Ashford's face was white. "My sister blackmailed. Grayson, why didn't you tell me?" Grayson's voice was low, shaking. I was young, sir, afraid. Miss Eleanor begged me to stay silent. After the heist, she left, and I never saw her again. Emily's tears fell, her voice soft. Mother, she was protecting us. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. So, Monsieur Grayson, you carried messages to Baxter's father, who knew of the jewels. Finch's father, a reporter, was also there, writing about the heist. The mastermind targets those tied to that night. But you, monsieur, what else do you know? Grayson shook his head, his eyes pleading. Nothing, sir, I swear I only did as Miss Eleanor asked. Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the wine, monsieur? The night Finch died, you poured it. Could someone have tampered with it? Grayson's hand shook. I poured from one bottle, sir, but I left the tray in the kitchen for a moment. Anyone could have touched it. Poirot's mustache twitched. Anyone, yes. And the letter opener that killed Monsieur Baxter. It was from Lord Ashford's study where you work. Grayson's face paled further. I didn't take it, sir. I swear on my life. Ashford stepped forward, his voice sharp. Enough, Poirot. Grayson's no killer. You're accusing my staff without proof. Poirot's smile was cold. I accuse no one, Lord Ashford. I ask, I observe, and the little. Graysells find the truth, Hastings whispered. He's hiding something, Poirot. You see it, don't you? Poirot nodded slightly. Oui, mon ami. But is it guilt or fear? We must find out. He led Hastings to the east wing, returning to the hidden vault behind Eleanor's portrait. The metal box still held the diary, letters, and the single diamond. Poirot reread a letter from Eleanor. Grayson is loyal, but he knows too much. I trust him, but I fear for him. Poirot's pulse quickened. Grayson was more than a footman to Eleanor. He was her confidant. Hastings frowned. You think he's the mastermind? Not yet clear, Poirot said. But he is a key. We must watch him. They searched Grayson's quarters, a small room near the kitchen, finding a locked trunk. The silver key with the rose engraving didn't fit, but Poirot picked the lock with a hairpin, revealing old letters from Eleanor, thanking Grayson for his loyalty. One, dated 1906, read, The jewels are safe, but Baxter's father watches. If I fall, protect Emily. Hastings whistled. He was protecting Emily's mother. But why stay silent now? Fear, Poirot said. Or loyalty to the wrong person. Back in the drawing room, the guests were restless, the storm louder. Poirot confronted Grayson again, holding up the letters. You were Eleanor's ally, monsieur. She trusted you with the jewel's secret. Why hide this? Grayson's face crumpled, tears welling. I promised her, sir. She said the truth would destroy the family. After she left, I stayed to serve Lord Ashford, to watch over Miss Emily. Clara's eyes widened. You knew all this? Oh, Grayson. You're full of surprises. Ashford's voice was hoarse. Grayson, you kept this from me, my own sister. Emily's voice was soft, trembling. He was protecting Mother. Thank you, Grayson. Poirot's eyes gleamed. But the mastermind, Monsieur Grayson, knows these secrets too. Are they yours? Grayson shook his head, his voice breaking. No, sir. I swear I'm no killer. Poirot nodded, but his mind was sharp. We shall see. No one leaves this room tonight. As midnight loomed, the manor grew colder, the shadows deeper. The guests stayed together, Clara clinging to Emily, Ashford pacing, Grayson silent. At 11, a loud crash echoed from the hall. Poirot ran toward it, finding a shattered lamp and a new note. Grayson's tale is touching, Poirot, but the truth cuts deeper. Midnight comes. Poirot's eyes burned with determination. The mastermind is close, mon ami. They hear us, they see us, but Hercule Poirot will catch them. The manor was a web of secrets, the past tightening its grip, and the killer was watching. But Poirot's little gray cells were sharper than ever. Chapter 11. The Midnight Trap. The storm outside Ashford Manor howled like a trapped animal, its winds battering the ancient stone walls, shaking the windows and casting flickering shadows across the dimly lit halls. The air inside was thick with dread, the scent of candle wax, old books, and fear clinging to every corner. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing room, his black suit immaculate, his mustache perfectly groomed, his green eyes burning with focus. In his pocket were the clues that had piled up like pieces of a deadly puzzle. Finch's notebook with the numbers 71421-3 and the phrase the mastermind watches, the photograph of Eleanor Ashford, the map to the hidden vault, Eleanor's diary, revealing her role in the 1905 jewel heist, and the mastermind's taunting notes, the latest reading. Grayson's tale is touching Poirot, but the truth cuts deeper. Midnight comes. The murders of Mr. Leonard Finch and Sir Harold Baxter had turned the manor into a death trap, and Poirot's little gray cells were racing to catch the killer before they struck again. Captain Hastings stood beside him, his sandy hair disheveled, his face pale with worry. "Another note, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "Finch poisoned, Baxter stabbed, and now they're promising more by midnight. Grayson's story about Eleanor. Do you believe him?" Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes gleaming. "Grayson speaks truth, mon ami, but not all of it. He was Eleanor's confidant tied to the jewels, but the mastermind is another. Tonight we set a trap using the vault as bait." Hastings frowned, his hands fidgeting. "A trap? That's risky, Poirot. The killer's watching every move." Poirot's smile was grim. "Oui, but they are reckless. Their notes, their taunts, they crave the game. We will give them one, and Hercule Poirot will win." The remaining guests, Lord Reginald Ashford, Miss Clara Duval, Miss Emily Ashford, and Grayson the butler, sat in the drawing room, their faces drawn, their voices hushed. Ashford stood by the fireplace, his silver hair glinting, his usual, sly charm replaced by a nervous scowl. Clara sat fanning herself, her silk dress shimmering, her dramatic sighs barely masking her fear. Emily sat in a corner, her hands twisting her lace handkerchief, her dark eyes wide with dread. Grayson moved silently, clearing teacups, but Poirot noted the tension in his jaw, a flicker of unease in his steady hands. Poirot held up the latest note, his voice firm. "The mastermind threatens again, promising another death by midnight. But we will not wait for their move. Tonight we return to the vault and we draw them out." Clara gasped, her fan snapping shut. "The vault? Oh, Monsieur Poirot, it's too dangerous. What if they kill again?" Ashford's face tightened, his hands clenching. "This is madness. Poirot, you can't risk my niece or my guests. Find the killer without these games." Emily's voice was soft, trembling. "Monsieur Poirot, please. I trust you, but I'm scared." Grayson's voice was low, steady. "Shall I prepare the east wing, sir, to secure it?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "No, Monsieur Grayson. You will stay with the guests. The trap is mine to set." Hastings whispered, "You're sure about this, Poirot? What if the mastermind's one step ahead?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "They think they are, mon ami, but they leave clues. Notes, broken windows, stolen weapons, their arrogance will trap them." Poirot gathered the guests, outlining his plan. "We will go to the east wing together, to the vault. I will announce, 'We've found the jewels to lure the mastermind. You will stay in pairs under my watch, no one moves alone.'" Clara's eyes widened. "Lure them? Oh, it's like a play, but so frightening." Ashford snorted. "You're using us as bait." "Poirot, I won't have it." Emily's voice was soft. "If it stops the killer, Uncle, we must try." Grayson nodded slightly, his face blank. Poirot watched him closely, noting the flicker in his eyes. They moved to the east wing, the corridor dark and dusty, the portraits of Ashford's past watching with painted eyes. The hidden passage behind Eleanor's portrait led to the vault, its door still open from Poirot's earlier discovery. The metal box inside held Eleanor's diary, letters, and the single diamond. Poirot held up the diamond, his voice loud enough to echo. "The jewels are here in the vault. The mastermind's secret is revealed." The guests gasped, their eyes on the diamond. Clara clapped, her curls bouncing. "Oh, how beautiful! Are there more?" Ashford's face paled. Jewels? Here, impossible. Emily's hands trembled, her voice soft. Mother's diamonds. She hid them for us. Grayson stood silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. Poirot watched him, his mind sharp. They returned to the drawing room. Poirot's announcement meant to spread through the manor, to reach the mastermind's ears. He ordered the guests to stay together, with Hastings watching the door. No one leaves, he said. The killer will come, drawn by the jewels. As the clock neared 11, Poirot slipped to the library, checking for new clues. The oak table still bore the faint bloodstain from Finch's death, the air heavy with dust. He found a scrap of paper under a chair, missed before, in the mastermind's handwriting. The jewels are a lie, Poirot. The truth is blood. Poirot's pulse quickened. The jewels are a distraction, he murmured. The mastermind kills for another reason. He returned to the drawing room, the guests restless, the storm louder. He showed the note, watching their faces. The mastermind says the jewels are a lie. What truth do they hide? Clara's fan fluttered, her voice shrill. A lie? Then, why all this? Why kill Finch and Baxter? Ashford's voice was hoarse. My family's ruined by this heist nonsense. If there are no jewels, what's the point? Emily's tears fell, her voice soft. Mother. She knew something. Maybe that's what they're after. Grayson's hands shook slightly as he poured tea. Poirot turned to him. Monsieur Grayson, you carried Eleanor's messages to Baxter's father. Did she ever speak of another truth beyond the jewels? Grayson's face paled, his voice low. She said the heist was a cover, sir. Someone betrayed the family, but she wouldn't say who. Poirot's eyes gleamed. A betrayal. This is the heart of it. As midnight approached, the tension was unbearable, the clock ticking like a heartbeat. Poirot kept the guests together, his eyes on every move. At 11:30, a scream pierced the manor, coming from the hall. Poirot ran, Hastings behind him, finding Clara slumped against the wall, her face white, a tiny dart in her neck. She was breathing, but barely, her eyes fluttering. Hastings knelt, checking her pulse. She's alive, Poirot. Poison, you think? Poirot examined the dart, its tip glistening with a clear liquid. A sedative, perhaps not lethal, yet. The mastermind wants her alive, to send a message. Emily sobbed, clinging to Ashford. She was with me. I turned away for a moment, and then... this. Ashford's face was white. Poirot, do something. My guests are dropping like flies. Grayson stepped forward, his voice shaking. I'll fetch water, sir, to help her. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Stay, Monsieur Grayson, no one moves. He carried Clara to a sofa, her breathing shallow but steady. He found a note in her hand, in the mastermind's handwriting. A warning, Poirot. The truth is closer than you think. Midnight is here. Poirot's eyes burned with determination. The mastermind has struck, but they have failed. Clara lives, and we are close. He gathered the guests, now only Ashford, Emily, and Grayson, with Clara unconscious. The dart was meant to scare, not kill, he said. The mastermind is among us, and they are desperate. Tell me, who left this room tonight? Ashford shook his head. I was here with Emily. Emily nodded, tears streaming. I was with Clara until she went to the hall for air. Grayson's voice was low. I was here, sir, serving tea. Poirot's mustache twitched. Yet a dart was fired, a note left. Someone moved unseen. The clock struck midnight. The manor silent except for the storm. Poirot stood, his voice cold. The trap is set, and the mastermind has stepped into it. Hercule Poirot will end this game. The manor was a web of lies, the past tightening. Its grip, and the killer was close, but Poirot's little gray cells were sharper than ever. Chapter 12. The truth revealed, the storm over Ashford Manor began to weaken, its winds softening to a low moan, but the tension inside the ancient walls was sharper than ever. The air was heavy with the scent of candle wax, damp stone, and fear, the flickering light of the chandelier casting long shadows across the drawing room. Hercule Poirot stood at its center, his black suit pristine, his mustache perfectly groomed, his green eyes blazing with the clarity of truth. In his hands were the clues that had led to this moment. Finch's notebook with the numbers 714-21-3 and the phrase, "The Mastermind watches," the photograph of Eleanor Ashford, the map to the hidden vault, Eleanor's diary revealing her role in the 1905 jewel heist, and the Mastermind's taunting notes, the latest found with Clara Duval after a poisoned dart struck her. A warning, Poirot. The truth is closer than you think. Midnight is here. The murders of Mr. Leonard Finch and Sir Harold Baxter, and the attempt on Clara's life, had turned the manor into a deadly stage, and Poirot's little gray cells had pieced together the final act. Captain Hastings stood beside him, his sandy hair messy, his face pale but determined. "This is it, Poirot," he whispered. "Clara's alive, but barely. The Mastermind's still out there, and we're running out of time. Who is it?" Poirot's mustache twitched, his eyes gleaming. "The Mastermind, mon ami, has played a clever game, but they have made mistakes. Their notes, their clues, their arrogance, they have shown their hand. Tonight we end this." The remaining guests, Lord Reginald Ashford, Miss Emily Ashford, and Grayson the butler, sat in the drawing room, their faces drawn, their voices silent. Clara lay on a sofa, her breathing shallow but steady, the sedative dart removed, but her condition fragile. Ashford stood by the fireplace, his silver hair glinting, his usual sly charm replaced by a haggard frown. Emily sat clutching her torn lace handkerchief, her dark eyes wide with fear. Grayson stood near the door, his pale face blank, but Poirot noted the tension in his hands, a flicker of unease in his steady gaze. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs, the game is over. The Mastermind has killed 2 men and tried to silence another, but they cannot silence Hercule Poirot. Tonight, I reveal the truth." Clara stirred, her voice weak. "Monsieur Poirot, who did this?" Ashford's voice was hoarse. "Get on with it, Poirot, my home's a slaughterhouse." Emily's tears fell, her voice soft. "Please, make it stop." Grayson's voice was low. "Sir, shall I fetch more tea?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Stay, Monsieur Grayson. All must hear, for the truth concerns us all." Hastings leaned close, whispering, "You've got it, haven't you? The whole puzzle?" Poirot nodded slightly, his eyes never leaving the guests. "Oui, mon ami. The little gray cells have spoken." He began, his voice steady, weaving the story like a tapestry. "It began with the game, a murder mystery planned by Lord Ashford, but beneath it was a real crime, rooted in 1905 when a fortune in diamonds vanished from this manor. Eleanor Ashford, sister to Lord Ashford, hid the jewels, as her diary and letters reveal. She feared her father's enemies, including Mr. Baxter, father of Sir Harold, who blackmailed her. Mr. Finch's father, a reporter, wrote of the heist. Stirring trouble. These connections link our victims. Clara's eyes fluttered, her voice faint. "Eleanor. I knew her, as Clara Bell. She paid me to stay quiet." Poirot nodded. "Oui, mademoiselle. You saw Baxter's father threaten her and you kept her secret. But someone else knew. Someone who used this past to kill." Ashford's face tightened. "My sister was no thief. This is nonsense." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "Not nonsense, Lord Ashford. Eleanor hid the jewels to protect the family, but the heist was a betrayal. Someone close turned against her." Emily's voice was soft, trembling. "Mother. She said grandfather was betrayed, but never who." Poirot held up Finch's notebook. The numbers 714-21-3 were the key. 714 is July 14th, 1905, the heist. 21-3 was a code for the vault's lock, which we found. But the numbers also point to a name, a cipher for the Mastermind. Hastings frowned. "A name. How?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "In the old alphabet code, where A is 1, B is 2, and so on, The numbers 7, 14, 21, 3 spell GNUC. At first unclear, but reversed 3, 21, 14, 7 gives CUNG, suggesting a name or initials. We will return to this. He turned to Grayson. Monsieur Grayson, you were Eleanor's confidant, carrying messages to Baxter's father. You knew her. Secrets, yes? Grayson's face paled, his hands trembling. I did as she asked, sir. I swore to protect her. Poirot nodded. And you did, for years. But someone else knew, someone who used your loyalty, your silence. He held up the Mastermind's notes. These notes, left in halls, pinned to tables, dropped with darts, they are theatrical, meant to taunt. They know my methods, my fame. They call themselves the Mastermind, a title of pride, of control. Clara's voice was weak. Theatrical? Like me? Poirot's smile was gentle. No, mademoiselle. Your theatrics are of the stage, not of murder. The Mastermind is colder, more cunning. He turned to Ashford. Lord Ashford, you planned this game, invited me, a famous detective, to your home. Why? Ashford's face flushed. I told you I admire your cases. It was to be fun. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Fun or a trap? You knew Finch was digging into the heist, asking about Eleanor. You knew Baxter's father was tied to it. Did you invite them to silence them? Ashford's voice rose, shaking. Silence them? That's absurd. I'm no killer. Emily sobbed, her voice soft. Uncle, please, tell the truth. Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice was firm. Mademoiselle Emily, you are innocent, I think, but you carry your mother's fear. She left you to protect you, but from whom? He turned to Grayson again. Monsieur Grayson, you swore to protect Emily. Did Eleanor fear her own brother? Grayson's face crumpled, tears welling. She said Lord Ashford was ambitious, that he wanted the jewels for himself. She hid them to stop him. Ashford roared, stepping forward. Lies, my sister was mad. I never touched those jewels. Poirot raised a hand, his voice cold. Calm yourself, Lord Ashford. The truth is near. He paced, his eyes scanning the room. Finch was poisoned, likely in his wine, which Grayson poured but left unattended. Baxter was stabbed with your letter opener, Lord Ashford, taken from your study. Clara was struck with a dart, meant to warn, not kill. Each crime was bold, planned, and tied to the heist. Hastings whispered, The cipher, Poirot. The name? Poirot nodded, his voice rising. The numbers 7, 14, 21, 3 reversed as 3, 21, 14, 7 give CUNG, but the true cipher is simpler. The numbers correspond to the initials of the Mastermind's motive: greed, need, urgency, control. And the name they point to, hidden in plain sight, is Reginald Ashford. The room gasped, Clara's eyes widening, Emily's hands covering her mouth. Ashford's face went white, his voice a snarl. Me? You're mad, Poirot. I'm no murderer. Poirot's eyes were like steel. You are the Mastermind, Lord Ashford. You planned this game to lure Finch and Baxter, who knew too much about the heist. Finch was close to exposing your role, Baxter's father, your accomplice. You poisoned Finch's wine, stabbed Baxter with your own letter opener, and darted Clara to scare us, to keep control. Ashford laughed, a harsh sound. Proof, Poirot, where's your proof? Poirot held up the photograph of Eleanor. Your sister hid the jewels, fearing you. Her diary speaks of your ambition, your meetings with Baxter's father. The map was in your study, the vault known to you. The notes written in your elegant hand match the invitation you sent me. Emily sobbed, her voice breaking. Uncle, is it true? Ashford's face twisted, his voice low. You're clever, Poirot, but wrong. I wanted the jewels, yes, but I didn't kill. Poirot stepped closer, his voice relentless. You invited me to outwit me, to prove your cunning. The numbers 7 to 14, 21, 3 were your flourish, a code to the vault and your initials RA in a twisted cipher. But you miscalculated. Clara's dart was your mistake. Her perfume, used to frame her, was in your study. Grayson's voice was soft, shaking. Sir, I saw you take the letter opener the night Baxter died. I said nothing for Miss Eleanor's sake. Ashford's face crumpled, his hands shaking. You You traitor. Poirot's voice was cold. You betrayed your sister, your family. You sold the jewels, but Finch and Baxter knew, and you silenced them. Clara was next for her old secret. Ashford lunged, but Hastings grabbed him, pinning his arms. Emily sobbed. Clara stirred. Grayson stood frozen. Poirot raised a hand. It is over, Lord Ashford. The police will come when the storm clears. You will face justice. Ashford slumped, his voice a whisper. I wanted the manor to thrive. The jewels were mine by right. Poirot's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. No right justifies murder. The game is done. The manor fell silent, the storm fading, the shadows lifting. Emily clung to Grayson, Clara wept, and Hastings held Ashford firm. Poirot stood tall, his little gray cells victorious, the truth revealed at last.